What is sound? According to Dr. Teresa Ballard, who is a physicist and the host of Mystery Teachings, she says that sound is the expression of thought from the universal mind. There is a belief that sound is fundamental to creation. Our own Genesis may have started in a similar way. Look at this. According to Christian, it is said that God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. This is an order from sound. So basically, sound is the basis of the existence according to Christian. Dr. Jeffrey Thompson from the Center for Neuroacoustic Research argued that sound travels through water 5 times better than it travels through air. And then Kimber RM, who is a music therapist, she said that sound is the first sense to develop in the womb and the last sense to go when we die. From this, we get the point that sound is the most direct form to connect with the source. Many traditions use symbols, instruments, and songs just to express their origin. Many traditions put special or sacred value on the sounds and songs and spoken words. Words have powers. We are talking about spellings. What is spellings? Spellings come from the word spells. You know, spells has been associated with witchcraft. Anytime you speak, you spell. That's why from a word you get the spellings. A single letter, you call it a spell. Spell this word, I, O, or whatever. So as you speak, you literally spell as you speak. That's why you are told, do not speak negatively about yourself. Again, where do we go to? Sound. Without sound, there's no spelling. To understand the secret of the universe, you need to think of it in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. According to science, matter are never still. They bend, jiggle, stretch, and this one is happening at a very fixed average point. Sound cannot exist without atomic vibrations. In Eastern cultures, the ear is considered to be the more receptive, the yin and feminine, while the eye is considered to be the more active, the yang or masculine. From the part of brains, or the part of the brain, we have the conscious mind and we have the subconscious mind. You can only know the difference between right and wrong through the conscious mind, When anything reaches the subconscious mind, there's no right and wrong. The subconscious mind only executes whatever lands into it, whether it's true, whether it's false. That's why parents are told, do not say negative words to your children. I want you to think of jokes like this one. Think of this process. The whole universe is vibrational. This one is called the Schumann resonance. But what's the effect of sound really? There's this process. First of all, there is the fertilization. There is formation of the heartbeat. Heart beating, the lab-dub sound. When the baby comes out, the first thing that the baby does, the baby produces a sound, a cry. Thereafter, the baby responds to sound orders. I have a question for you. Why does certain types of music make you want to cry? Why does some music boost your ego? Why does certain types of music affect your spirituality, either positively or negatively? Music is a situation where you are playing sounds and enjoying the sounds for the sound's sake. All music is connected to memory and history, despite their origin. We have the Kululi clan in Papua New Guinea. They believe that music comes from the money bird. And they believe that the birds hovering above the forest, these are their ancestors. They are speaking to them. And in return, they tend to imitate the sound of the bird as they participate in a very great circle of life. Music is more of a ritual. Picture this. When you talk, you spell. But here we have multiple spells in uniformity. So it's like you're performing a ritual. That's how powerful music is. In most traditions, it is believed that music gives you wings to fly through cosmos. The first musical notation was invented by Sumerians and Babylonians. It was known as the Hurrian hymn number 6. It was found around 1400 BC, and still nobody can decipher it. The only first decipherable is the Seikilos epitaph, found around 200 AD. It is found in Tokyo and Italia, and it has evolved and advanced. We have parts of the brain and how they react to music. First one, we have the neocortex. Remember, this is a part of the brain that is occupied with learning and experience. So, in the meantime, it learns the patterns of the song. We have the brainstem, which is one of the oldest layer. Simplest organisms, they have this. It is flinged to reflexes in sound. Shocks and loud bangs will trigger the brainstem to reflex. We have the basal ganglia, which is the one that responds to pleasure. Whether a sound is pleasant or unpleasant, it is responded to by the basal ganglia. This one is found in the reptilian brain. In the mammalian brain, we have the amygdala. This is where emotions happen, the emotions of sadness, anger, and fear. So the amygdala part of the brain, this is where you process patterns and complexities. We have the solfeggio frequencies. So normally, we usually have 6 solfeggio frequencies and 3 additional ones. So for the 6 solfeggio frequencies, we have the 396 Hz, for 17 Hz, 528 Hz, 639 Hz, 741 Hz, and 852 Hz. And then the three additional ones, we have 174 Hz, 285 Hz, 963 Hz. So how did these frequencies come about? So early in the 11th century, we had an Italian music theorist called Guido di Arezzo. He was looking for ways to teach melodies, harmonies, chants, and hymns. So he came up with several techniques to teach the music. He created 6 notation for expressing music, and this is the modern diatonic scale that we use. So today's solfeggio, they use 7 tones, whereby you have do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, while the original one was ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la. This one was the one for Guido di Arezzo. So solfeggio, this is the use of solfa syllables to express tones. The exact frequencies of the original solfeggio, they weren't known because different tunings were being used throughout history. In the 70s, we had 2 doctors, that is Dr. Joseph Puleo and Dr. Leonard Horowitz. They rediscovered the solfeggio and brought it back to public awareness. So according to them, these were the frequencies behind the note.
It's an interesting thing when we think about humans as mammals and then our other mammals that we're surrounded by. And right now I'm going to not be talking about whales and elephants, but I'm going to keep it to the ones that we get to have, the cuddly, furry friends that we get to have at home, our dogs and our cats. And it's an interesting thing to look at the hearing ranges that take place, that you can see here that humans only can hear up to 20,000 hertz, and that's what we're born with. That's, I mean, right now, I'd be lucky if I'm, down to 8,000. Now, I've spent a lot of time playing rock and roll and a lot of time in recording studios and a lot of time with loud music and critical listening and all that, and I've used my ears well, but they're nowhere near where they used to be. And just by being alive and being on this very noisy planet, we have a lot of degradation that takes place with our hearing as we age. But at the top of our hearing, we're at 20,000, and our cats hear all the way up to 64,000 hertz. Isn't that interesting? They can hear the flapping of the wings of little insects. They can actually hear that. That's how they can capture what they can, and all of that. Dogs, up to 45,000 hertz. The strongest sensory organ on dogs are their noses, not their ears. Okay? And as you can see, we're all about the same in terms, the difference between 20, 45, and 67 cycles per second is very small. And so we all hear about the same low. Elephants are very different. But that's a conversation for another time. But I was asked to do a project where, because I had spent a lot of time creating music that was used in neurodevelopmental clinics for children and adults with neurodevelopmental challenges, some in the autistic spectrum, I was asked if I could apply that same knowledge base to animals. And at first I thought, wow, that's really a wacky phone call. And then I thought about it, and I thought, you know, this will give me an opportunity now to be able to see what is this interrelationship between our hearing and what it is and how it is that we take in information, and how do these animals that live here on the planet, how do they do it, and what can I learn from them? And 15 years later, I'm still involved in that. I ended up writing a book, putting out music, doing a clinical study on it that then led to a book and all of that. And so there's a company called I Calm Pet, and it involves through a dog's ear, music called Through a Dog's Ear and Through a Cat's Ear and all of that. And it ends up, we provided music now to over 2,000 shelters and rescues around the world. And because it ends up that the exact same things that calm us calm them. Simple. They like simple sound. You can see that the human ear, the cat ear, and the dog ear is all pretty much the same. And again, forgive me, I can't spend a lot of time on this, but you can see just by looking at it that they have all got a very similar, is this the laser printer? Wow, look at that. You can see that the inner ear right there is pretty much the same. The cochlea and the middle ear that's got the 3 bones, the 2 tiny muscles, the external ear, it's the same here. The placement is a little bit different, but you can see that they've got pretty much the same structure. Look at that. They've got the vestibular organs in the same way as we do. The bony labyrinths right here, the vestibular, is what keeps us in balance, allows us to be able to be vertical and not just horizontal. The only thing that they've got that's different, I'm not going to say the only thing, but one of the things that they've got that is different is they've got the muscles that move these ears. I want those. Can you imagine what it'd be like to be in a conversation with somebody, man, and be having your ears just kind of like moving all over the place while you're doing it? Like that would make it very hard to be like having like a serious relationship conversation. You can just imagine where somebody would say, see, you're not paying attention. In applied psychoacoustics, what we're really talking about, again, is how we listen, our psychological responses, and the physiological impact of music and sound. Now, healing with sound is both ancient and modern, as we know. I mean, people have been looking into sound for a long time before they were even people. The finest of ancient wisdom is now complemented by high-tech frequency analysis and precision of application. We now use the vibration of sound with a deeper understanding of molecular reaction, neurological benefit, and emotional effect. Psychoacoustics, which is the study of the effect of music and sound on the human nervous system, forms the foundation upon which the emerging field of sound work builds. So within the 21st century, there are basically 5, and I'm going to say that there are many more than that, forms of acoustics, but we're talking about sound. And in acoustics, we know that sound is the branch of physics that is concerned with the properties of sound. That's going to get a little bit too scientific, and we don't really need to be talking about that right now, but acoustics is about how is the sound bouncing off the corners of this room. Acoustics is about sound. Then we have psychoacoustics that we've talked about, the study of the impact of music and sound on the human nervous system. Vibroacoustics, the use of specific frequencies at different places on the body. So that people are now working with tuning forks that are tuned to a specific frequency and putting it on the liver meridian. Another form of vibroacoustics are sound beds or sound chairs where you're able to sit and vibration is coming up and coming directly into the body. It's a very exciting field. It was started by Peter Guy Manners in England. He passed away a few years ago after a long, long life of study into this. And there are many people that are involved in cymatics, the use of specific frequency on the body. It's a wonderful, wonderful field. And it's a field that is coming up and will be very much a part of 21st century medicine. Bioacoustics, we've talked about the effect of how it is that animals create sound, and an obscure definition, what is the effect of human noise on animals? And that, even though I'm not a noisy guy, contrary to popular belief, I mean, I like to make fun noise and sweet noise and beautiful music, but I am interested in what is our impact on the planet. All right? And then there's agroacoustics. So where I live in Oregon, marijuana is legal. I was just in the airport the other day, and an indicator of how much money is being made by legalized marijuana was that almost all of the advertising was for marijuana in the airport. And I just went, I have to take a picture of this. And the people who were standing next to me, they said, "Oh yeah, where are you from?" I'm from here, but I still don't believe it, right? So here you have people that are allowed to grow 10 plants each per medical marijuana card. And they're looking to gain the greatest yield off of each plant. When I went to go see very dear friends of mine who have a growing dome in New Mexico, and they were growing tomatoes, and I was so proud of my little tomatoes. And I looked at their tomatoes, and they were the biggest, they were state fair quality. And I said, "How are you doing this?" They said, "Tuning forks." And they were taking the tuning forks and they were putting them on the wood that was in the raised beds. Of course, it was in a completely controlled environment with a dome, with all the right biodynamics and all of that stuff going on. But nonetheless, they were using sound to increase the yield, whether or not we're talking about for cannabis or for tomatoes or for wheat or for whatever. This is being done. It is already being done. The Department of Agriculture looks at it askance. All right, because they would rather use the chemicals and all of that stuff and the herbicides. And yet there are countries in Indonesia, as an example, that have come here to study the use of sound so that they can increase the yields of their crops. So agroacoustics is an area that is of great interest to me as well, because I think that to be able to use frequency in a conscious way is something that is very, very important. It's a tool that's been given to us. So we have the chain of vibration. And how does this work? How do we actually bring sound into the nervous system? Well, this is what we know. Before we even bring it to us, we know that all matter vibrates, right? And we know that frequency is the speed at which matter vibrates. So frequency is only the descriptor of it. It's not an actual frequency. It's just frequency is how we say, if I go from here to there, this stage is 10 feet. Well, it's 10, which is important. It's not that it's feet. The feet are just measuring it. And frequency is just the measurement of the speed of vibration. The frequency of vibration creates a sound, and sometimes it is inaudible. And then sound can be molded into music. And so we know that within atomic structure, The electrons are moving around the nucleus of the atom at 880 miles per second. Now, Dr. Pritap and myself, with our handy little iPhones, could get out that calculator and do the math. I love the way that you were doing the math of breath and all that. I do the math of this. So you can imagine in the course of a day, if we're moving at 880 miles per second, why we feel a little tired by the end of the day. All right, we are vibrating beings, and everything around us is vibrating. That's a lot of sound. That's a lot of sound to try to figure out which sound in our discrimination we're going to keep out there and which sound we're going to bring in and listen to. So sound is a formidable force. It is a formidable energy on the planet. 880 miles per second within our cellular structure, within the atomic structure. Not the cellular, the atomic structure. All right? And as we say, vibration creates a sound, and then we know that sound can be molded into music. And so the way that we move this along is that basically they're different octaves, and they're really interchangeable. Atomic material, vibration, frequency, sound, music. The study of psychoacoustics dissects the listening experience. So I'd like to now talk about three areas that have become the primary thing that I teach around the world, which is I call tone, tempo, and pattern. Because when I look at all of the different healing modalities that are used, all the different sound forms that are having an impact on the nervous system of mammals and on people, they all basically chunk down to three different areas. Tone, which is resonance, entrainment, which is tempo, and pattern identification. And so we're going to talk about that now. So resonance is the impact of one vibration on another. To resonate is to resound. It's basically this. I put out a vibration here, and this vibration responds to it. So we go like this. Now all of a sudden we got a mirror going on. Or we would say, I'm putting out this vibration that then causes this vibration over here or this material over here to go into a similar vibration. Entrainment is the rhythmic manifestation of resonance. So if we're saying resonance is about how one vibration here can start another vibration to mimic it. Well, tempo, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, look at those feet are starting, and that's what entrainment is. Entrainment is where I start to go like this. And if I say, don't move, don't move. And then all of a sudden I watch, it's like her eyelid starts to flutter in rhythm, right? Because we can't help it. You can move. And there's some people that are very, very available to entrainment, and they immediately, we're wired for entrainment. It's an ecological process. It's easier for the body to go with it than to fight it. And so it's a way for us to just be able to go, I'm going to conserve my energy. I'm going to use it for other things because the brain has got so many other things to deal with. It's going to say, I'm not going to fight that rhythm. And so, and before you know it, everybody's tapping their feet, doing their heads, because it's just easier, right? If you go, stop, don't do that, you're going to go, oh. Right? All right, so entrainment is the rhythmic manifestation of rhythm, and we love it because it means that we get to use this wonderful, fun rhythm to be able to impact brain waves, heart rate, breath, and then it gets into the more subtle rhythms of the body. But this is one of the reasons why I have such a good time with this. And so what do we all have in common? that is our resonant frequency, that we could be in many places here in Philadelphia today. And yet we're all choosing to be here in this room together. What is our common resonance? And how do we, each of us, how do we take responsibility and use our own power of vibration in the way that we impact other people? When we think about pattern identification, the third of tone, tempo, and pattern, then it's the brain's analytical process of identifying a pattern, thereby enabling cerebral attention to shift from active awareness to passive acknowledgement. And what I really mean by that is it's also an ecological function. The brain has so much work to do, it's really efficient. And so it's saying, okay, I want to get the pattern here. And so as soon as I have the pattern, I'm off it. So what's next? Oh, there's the pattern of that. Oh, there's the pattern of that. Oh, there's the pattern. I mean, I've got a body to run. Patterns. So these are patterns that we're born with. A discernible regularity. It involves the identification of faces, objects, words, and melodies. Pattern recognition does not occur instantly, although it does happen automatically and spontaneously, and pattern recognition is an innate ability of animals. Pattern recognition, faces, objects, words, melodies. It's not hard to see the pattern, right? We got the pattern. You can take a look at it. There's the pattern. We got it. More complex pattern, right? But still, nonetheless, we can see it. We go, okay, what's next, right? Can you imagine the brains, the way that that our children and grandchildren's brains are being affected now by the quick motion of everything they see on some kind of a screen? So in active listening mode, the brain looks to identify a pattern and middle ear function is engaged, and once the pattern is found, as we said, habituation sets in and the brain moves on to other things. So in thinking about the difference between hearing and listening, I want to take just a few moments and I want to speak about, I want to talk about Alfred Tomatis, French ear, nose, and throat surgeon, the grandfather of modern-day psychoacoustics. He is, we talked about Freud, and he's the creator of the Tomatis method. The Tomatis method, there are very few practitioners here in America, but they can be found in the major cities, and there are many in Europe. All right? The core principles of Alfred Tomatis are really what are most important to me. The primary function of the ear is to charge the neocortex of the brain. It is not to hold our glasses on, and it is not to wear jewelry. Okay? The primary function is not even this. It's not the interpretation of language. The primary function is to charge the neocortex of the brain. The active process of listening can be enhanced or refocused by auditory stimulation using high frequencies. You go to a Tomatis clinic or a Tomatis practitioner, and they will slap a pair of headphones, special headphones on you, and 5 days a week for 6 weeks, split up over the course of 3 to 6 months. You'll listen to filtered Mozart that is designed to be able to recalibrate the two tiny muscles of the middle ear. And I wish I could talk to you more about this, but in the day and age of Google, you can find out everything that you want to know about this, okay? And the thing that I want to also say is that, thank goodness, there is a way now to be able to remediate what takes place. I had a father who was a screamer. He was a real rageaholic, all right? And it caused me to shut down the frequencies of the male voice. How else can a little boy deal with somebody who yells every night? I'd turn to the dinner table, my 3 sisters, they'd always be crying at dinner. What's wrong with dinner? What's wrong with this picture? What does a little boy do with a big man? Right? So I shut down. And it was only 40 years later, when I was writing an article about the Tomatis work, that I went into a practitioner in Denver, and he did a hearing test on me. And he did not do an intake. He did not write down anything about me. He had not done any kind of a study, didn't ask me, no interview, nothing. He looked at my hearing test, and he said, "Oh, do you have trouble with your dad?" Yeah. And 3 months later, I could hear those frequencies again. I said, how did you know that? He said, you shut out 1500 hertz. That's the adult range, adult male range. Now, per resonance, per Dr. Tomatis, high tones tend to charge the nervous system. Low tones tend to discharge the nervous system. Okay? And I could explain to you the physiological reason for that, but I don't have time. But what I want to say is there are a couple of copies of my book, one of my books, The Power of Sound, back there, and I wrote deeply into this topic. If you can't find it here, get it on Amazon or whatever, and you'll be able to flesh this out. Low tones tend to discharge the nervous system. Discharging is not a bad thing. Yoga, it seems to me, spends a lot of time discharging the nervous system. It needs to. We get so amped up in our lives as it is that this is a good thing. But I think that probably I would be set straight on that, because yoga obviously is about being able to arouse the nervous system as well, because that's an important function. Every bit as important. And so just for you guys to think about. So I want to just go back here and revisit for just a second about how atomic material is what then creates a vibration. Anything that moves in a periodic form creates a vibration. All vibration is measured in frequencies. Vibration has a sound. Sound can be turned into music through resonance and entrainment, pattern identification. This is the effect of music and sound on the nervous system. So resonance is all about one vibration having an effect on another, charging another, speeding it up, or slowing it down. And we talk about entrainment as a rhythmic form of entrainment, as a rhythmic form of resonance, and we talk about pattern identification as a way of understanding how it is that we can impact or keep the things from impacting us that we don't necessarily want. And then there's this. Oh, yes. We love our cell phones. We don't go anywhere without them. We all have them, and usually they're on. A little tip, don't wear your cell phone around the most delicate parts of your body, okay? Because we're all beta testers for the frequency receivers on this. I am sure in this multi-trillion-dollar industry that there's been many billions of dollars set aside for class action suits that will come in the future, because they have to figure out on somebody what is the impact of these Wi-Fis. And how else are they going to know? And they're going to go, oh, gosh. So, what I want to say to you is, don't we love these things? Because these guys are also frequency generators. And can you imagine what it will be like to have a special little point that comes out of the headphone jack where you can just be able to say, can you imagine like in 100 years, maybe it's only 50 years, the way things are speeding up, maybe it's only 10 years, where you see somebody going and you go, what are you doing? And they're saying, oh, I'm working on my kidneys. This would be able to dial up the exact frequency vibration you want, put it right there on that kidney meridian. Take 5 minutes while you're waiting or you're sitting on the subway. Oh, I'm working on my kidneys. Okay, so we love these things. That's why we have them, right? Now, it's also important to understand that these are transmitting frequency receivers. They are transmitting and they are receiving. Use it wisely. All right, so entrainment, as we talked about, it's a mutual phase locking of two oscillators. The external and periodic rhythm speeds and slows down major body pulses, and the music alters the performance of the nervous system primarily because of entrainment. Now, if I was on a desert island with what I know about tone, tempo, and pattern, and somebody said, you only have one way to be able to impact your nervous system with sound, then I would find a stick and a rock, and I would use that. And to me, I've created many, many soundtracks that are used in clinics, classrooms, animal care facilities all around the world. We talk about the brain as being musical. Neuroscience has proven through brain imaging that music engages more brain areas than anything else, and rhythm is the most important fundamental aspect of music. So there's an interesting thing here. When the MRIs started to come out, in the early 90s, mid 90s, am I right, doctor? Is that about right? Then you had people who were in hospitals who used to be musicians who went, okay, my girlfriend got pregnant, I got married, and I had to stop being a musician, and I got a straight job, I'm a doctor now. But I always wondered, what was it that was going on? Why did I love music so much? It was like, what was it about that? And so here you had these guys who had these $1 million machines, and they said, let's put some electrodes on some people, and let's see what's happening. Well, the interesting thing is that they thought that they were going to find that the brain would light up just kind of here and here. But instead they found out that the brain lit up everywhere. That it wasn't just in the auditory cortex over here, and it wasn't over here, this, that, and over there. It was like almost everywhere. The whole brain was wired and was humming. No pun. No, that wasn't an intended pun. The brain was just humming. The brain was just working well. So, when we're thinking about these MRIs and about how the whole brain lit up, then you had these other neuroscientists who couldn't give a hoot about music. But they went, you're saying that when we study the brain of people who are listening to music and how it puts the brain to work to be able to interpret all of these different functions, we want to study the effect of music on the brain too, because it becomes a way for us to understand how the brain works. And so all of us music and sound guys became hitchhikers on the backs of the neuroscientists who were using music not to study music in the brain, but just to study the brain. And so consequently, in the last 20 years, the entire understanding of the brain and of music in the brain has exploded, because there is so much data, there are so many studies that are being done, not because they care about the music and the brain or the sound in the brain, but because music is so important to the study of understanding how the brain works. And so it has thrust the field of sound work greatly forward because of the MRI.
Today, every piano, orchestrator tools, every recording studio, and almost every digital instrument is tuned to the same reference pitch, and this is 440 Hz, and it is treated as the natural and universal frequency. It exists as invisible backbone of the modern music, and nobody still questions it. For most of human history, there was no universal tuning standard. Sound was local, it was organic, it was deeply tied to place. Each village had its own pitch. Each cathedral had its own resonance. Each bell tower produced a specific sound frequency that belonged to that region. The diversity vanished. What do you mean the diversity vanished? Today, the entire industrialized planet vibrates at exactly the same pitch. The transformation happened gradually, quietly, and with surprisingly little public debate. When you look deeper, something suspicious comes out. The same time the tuning happens is the same time the church bells are confiscated and replaced with speakers and tutors and microphones. Very few church bells exist. The single reference pitch idea is what we call the standardization or the regulation or the sound centralization. So what brought about this centralization or standardization? In the past, when musicians traveled from one place to another, they found it hard to cope with the musical instrument of that place. An example, a musician comes from Italy to France. The musical instrument in France have been tuned to a different reference pitch to the ones in Italy. So the musicians had a hard work of sitting in that place and learning the reference pitch of that point or that place. This was a very good advantage for the musicians. But if we look in the background, what was dying? In the same past, different communities produced different frequencies, and the frequency was owned by a certain community. Communities had bells, and the bells had been engineered to produce a certain frequency for a certain purpose. This explains the variety of frequencies and the variety of benefits for different frequencies. As we are going to a single reference pitch or a single frequency, all these past things are dying. In the year 1885, an international conference was held in Vienna. Several countries and states attended the conference. From this conference, it was agreed all the musical tools were to be pitched at 435 Hz, and this was to be a common reference. This 435 Hz, this was the frequency that was agreed to by the French government, whereby all the musical instruments in France were tuned to 435 Hz. And as the frequency succeeded, that's why it was the common reference in the 1885 conference. In Italy, the Italian national reference pitch was 432 Hz. Experiments were done with this 432 Hz by the Italian government, but they did not last long. Within a year, the international agreement from Vienna pushed Italy back to the French standard, which is 435 Hz. The centuries-old system of local acoustic identities was beginning to disappear. Even as government and institutions were standardizing sound on paper, another transformation was happening in physical world. The instruments that once defined those local frequencies were continuing to vanish. Community bells towers were being emptied. The bells were confiscated, melted, and recast for wars. By 20th century, much of Europe had lost the physical references that once defined its sound. All that remained were buildings designed for frequencies that do not exist. During the war, After military defeats, governments confiscated bells from churches to melt them into cannons. Bronze was valuable, and bell towers had enormous reserves of it. This was the first wave of destruction. Then came revolution. During the French Revolution, a decree ordered that each parish could keep only one bell. Every other bell was to be melted into coinage and metal. Roughly 80% of the bells disappeared, and the towers turned silent. Throughout the 19th century, wars across Europe continued, and this one demanded bronze, and much of it. In the 20th century, governments removed bells from towers to support wars. In Germany, nearly half of the bells were confiscated and destroyed. Now, microphones and speakers substitute the natural resonance that older structures produced. The buildings no longer generate the music but contain it. So, how did sound shift from thousands of acoustic sound to a single frequency brought by French standard? Early 20th century, it welcomed a new technology. The technology was called radio. For the first time in history, sound could be transmitted across the entire continent. A single reference tone could reach millions of musicians across the world. The Bureau of Standards in United States began broadcasting a precise tuning signal through radio transmissions. Musicians across the country could tune their instruments directly. The reference pitch changed to 440 Hz up to the current tuning standard. It is still the one being used up to now. At first, it was simply convenient. But convenience spread quickly as radio networks expanded. Orchestras began adapting and their instrument matched the standard. Recording studio and instrument manufacturer followed suit. 440 became the tuning reference.
Two frequencies, two worlds of sound. For centuries, music resonated at 432 Hz, the scientific pitch aligning with Earth's natural vibrations and Pythagorean harmonic ratios. Then in 1936, standardization shifted us to 440 Hz for industrial precision and broadcast consistency. What science reveals is fascinating. 432 Hz creates more symmetrical, harmonious patterns in cymatics experiments, while studies suggest it may lower heart rate and reduce stress compared to the brighter, more energizing 440 Hz. Is it coincidence that 432 Hz mathematically connects to the 8 Hz frequency of Earth itself? That its vibrations appear to resonate more deeply with our biological systems? Some believe this natural frequency harmonizes with our very DNA, awakening higher consciousness and supporting healing, a bridge where ancient wisdom meets modern science.
In 1939, the International Conference in London gathered representatives from multiple countries to discuss the musical pitch standards. Many nations attended the conference. Direction of standardization laid back to 440 Hz. And in 1955, the International Organization of Standardization officially adopted 440 Hz as the global musical reference. What happened to the centuries frequency ecosystem? The different acoustic frequencies. They were lost. Pay attention. The real change was not the difference in tuning from 432 Hz to 440 Hz, but the failure of the entire acoustic system interacting with specific buildings and communities. Imagine people using a single language in the whole universe. Communication will be easier, but culture will be lost. Human voices themselves interact strongly with architectural resonance. Gregorian chants is a good example.
Advocata nostra, los tuos misericordes, oculos, ad nos converte. Benedictum, fructum ventris tui, nobis post exilium ostende.
It evolved within the acoustic environment of stone cathedrals. The slow, sustained tones of the chants match the long reverberation times of those spaces. When sung inside a large cathedral, the voices blend into a continued wave of sound that fills the building. The architecture becomes part of the choir. But the modern churches are built with the sound-absorbing materials, and they are different. Why? They have short reverberation times, and this one forces singers to rely on microphones and electronic amplification to achieve the same effect. The music is the same, but in a different environment. Today, the world is filled with standardized tones. Electronic devices generate the same pitches. Musical instruments manufactured in factories, they are calibrated with identical measurements.